down because of a lack of actual, what we would sleep on as a normal bed. And what was really hardest for Christy and I is we were really helpless. Like, as much as we sympathize with her, there was no place to go out and buy a comfortable mattress.
Yeah.
They don't exist there. They just don't exist there. So it's impossible. It's impossible for us to just come home and say, you know what, let's just buy 1,000 mattresses and send it over there. You can't do that. There's no way to do that unless you're going to ship a container, which is extremely expensive. So we were almost helpless. And it's like, what do you do?
Well, it makes you think a little deeper into what, we feel it's us against, a lot of people say, you can't help everyone, but you can't help one. We could have taken the one BB, the one elderly lady, and we could have driven for 2 hours to Moshi and bought her a mattress. We could have done that. It was doable. We had the money. Could have bought her a mattress and brought it back for her, but it wasn't. You start out there in the middle of the open, that sense of you against, it's not you against a person or a person in front of you. It's you against an entire mindset and an entire way of living of a nation of people. Even the little girls. An 8-year-old herding cattle, she's probably some 55-year-old man's ninth wife. That just made me sick to my stomach. I wanted to hurl every time I saw these little girls out there. And the urgency to run out there and to take these little kids in and just, want to shelter them and beat it. What help would I really have been to her?
Right.
She
doesn't understand.
And it's her way of life. I haven't changed anything. It's the mindset of an entire nation of people that has to be changed. Yeah.
And in ministry, we get this idea of all these things that we, especially in America, that we should be doing, that we can provide,
Yeah.
especially when ministry has money or has a nice building.
This is E.
We should be doing this. We should feed people. We should provide for them. We should give them counseling. We should give them this. We should give them that. But and leading the ministry, I've had to make.
Now, I'm actually looking for
what do we do? We're limited in what
value
we
for
do.
it, trying to find a value for
And
the person who's
I learned
selling
a
it
lot from
out.
my daughter who went to Africa. When she came back, she said, "We do it wrong in America.
Possibly, yeah. I'm pursuing
Like,
different
I go
avenues.
to church here because she was very upset that they were honking at her because it was a 5,000 seat church. And she left church because they wanted to come. They were
trying to
gay.
get into the
They
vehicle,
did not
'cause I don't
feel
have a vehicle.
what she felt to be able to be a part of the war, what she felt when she was in Africa. And she said, I want Harry home done. And what actually happened was they helped me.
Yeah.
Because I realized I wasn't going there to, she found it funny that Tom's shoes, she would not have anything to do with Tom's shoes. Because
Okay.
she saw the shipment of Tom's come
All
over.
right, well, that's
And what they
needed.
said is actually a plastic thing and a really pretty, they throw them away. They laugh and say that's what the Americans said. They didn't care
All right,
about the
hey,
shoes
that'd be great.
because they're used to being
Thank you.
without shoes. What they wanted was education, water, and a way to make money. And so she said, it really changed my perspective as to what we're supposed to be doing. Once we gave these women Jesus, now they've had everything. Where when we get Jesus in America, oh, it's now I have Jesus, where's my BMW? And she said, what, we need to come to our giving people Jesus. And so, like, our ministry is different than many like it because that's all we concentrate on. I do some other small things, but 99% of what is give them Jesus. So most of the change would happen, we can't take any credit for it. Jesus does it. If we attach that, then it's much better. Because God had him here. He was probably really upset when that river broke up. He probably went, all I got now is meat grows in a river, you take my river. But the provider was going to provide.
He did, and he
Because
talked,
he had the important thing, that was God.
exactly.
Everything else is about, yes.
So he commanded a widow in that place to take care of Elijah. He says, go at once, stay there. I command the widow in that place to supply you with food. By the way, thank you for your
Which verse you are?
17:10. So he went to Zarephath. He came to the town gate. A widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "Anne, please bring me a piece of bread." "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied. I like the fact she says, "Lord your God," even though God commanded her to do something. "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar, a little oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home, make a fire, a meal for myself and my son, so we may eat it and die." So, here's a lady, she's down to her last little bit of flour and oil to make a cake for her son so they can eat and die. It's going to be their last meal. So, God commanded her to take care of them. She doesn't recognize that. She understands that this is the man of the Lord your God, not my God, she says. So she's kind of in a desperate spot. True?
I think her hope was a little bit dwindling if she were to throw out the statement, "We're gonna eat it and die."
Yeah, you
She's
saw
down to her last bit of hope.
Exactly.
Was she the first drama queen? Or was that true? I mean,
Yeah, I think, yeah.
well, I understand that, but, you know, think about her statement. Was she truly first, I'm going to die?
Because she could have been a woman that's like, "The nerve of this man, the odds might last a little bit," and
Now,
so she
did-
threw out a
but
sarcastic
Did
statement.
Elijah
Yeah.
know that was her last bit of bread?
Right.
From what she said.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't know. He just says, "Hey, can I have some, by the way, can I have some bread
Oh,
too?
we
I'm
first
hungry."
asked you didn't know, but after she stated.
Yeah, after,
She's willing
right.
to give him what she feels she can. So she knows, even though she's going home and she knows that she doesn't think about, "I'm gonna go home and die first." He asks for water, and she knows she can get him that. She's going to do that with him. But he asked for something she actually right now doesn't have. All she has is flour and water. She has no bread.
Right.
And so she wants to explain. And so the way I look at it is she wants to explain, "I don't have any. This is all I've got."
I got a kid at home. We're going to
Right,
make him die.
and this is all I've got left. And widows in those days, there was no more coming in. There was no
Yeah.
social
Correct.
security.
And there were no ravens supplying her with meat and bread.
Yeah, and it also sets up before that the land is barren.
Yes.
That they're
So-
in a drought,
What was she getting sticks? And wasn't everybody else getting sticks too?
maybe, but the other thing I think they're making a point of here in this is that her son's not even capable of work,
Because he's child.
or maybe, I don't know how old he is in early state, but maybe he was able to work but now can't. So now
Right.
her last hope as a widow is now not able to even
Yeah.
take care of
Good
her.
point.
Yeah.
Good
She's
point.
not thinking of the income that's coming in on the next
Right.
paycheck.
Right.
She
She's
doesn't have
saying, "We're gonna eat what we have left and
And
die."
die.
Yeah,
Nothing
exactly.
else is coming
So
in.
he probably isn't working.
So what's interesting though is the narrative of this woman, and then compared to the lady in the New Testament though, it's interesting. I'll continue because she says something in here, it's kind of like, really? And Elijah told her, "Don't be afraid," verse 13, "go home and do as you said, but first make a small cake for me from what you have and bring it to me. Then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel," he didn't say the Lord my God, he says the God of Israel, "will do for you. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord gives rain on the land." We find later in Scripture that took 3 years from that point. So for 3 years, she had flour and oil every day. She had provision for 3 years.
And then I assume water as well.
Well, yeah, and some water from somewhere.
Yeah.
So she had what she needed for 3 years. She went and did as Elijah had told her, so there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. The jar of oil was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word the Lord spoke to by Elijah. Wouldn't that be enough for you, like, for you guys to say, "Wow, wow"?
Absolutely.
But apparently, it didn't sink in for her. Let's look on. Verse 17. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house, became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, "What do you have against me? My son, of my sin, and kill my son." What was the sin that she's talking about, you think?
Maybe her unbelief in God, as she says, "You're."
Right, okay. Now, is that a sin to not believe in God?
In my eyes it is, but you know.
Maybe if she was commanded by God beforehand to give him the bread, but she said no.
That's all I have. Yeah.
That could have been it, because we don't see her initial response to God. All we see is God says, "I've commanded a woman to do this." We don't see the interaction between her and God at all.
I'm thinking because she said your God, that maybe there was a previous knowledge of God, and
Yeah.
and now
That she
and
forsook
if you
him.
read on, I think she's a young widow, because it says that she was holding her dead boy in her arms, and she handed him to Elijah at this time, who is an older man, and he carried him upstairs, laid him on the bed, and it says that he stretched himself out over the boy.
Yeah, so yeah, it was
So
a
this
young
isn't a
boy.
man, this is a smaller, younger, it's a
Yeah.
boy, it's a child, it's not. So when we go back to her response, her reaction to Elijah, I'm thinking she's a widow at a young age with a young boy and nobody to provide for her. So there might have been a little bit of fight in her response as to, what is the Lord doing to me? He's taking
Right.
my husband from
Yeah.
me. I have to provide for this child, and now here's this old man asking for my last little bit of what I have to give my son.
She owns a house,
True.
and her family is there somehow. That says, now, the son could be her family, or, because it says
Yeah.
she had food for her and her family. We don't know what that consists of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's famine.
Right, but we know for sure it's her and her son.
Yep.
And she owns the house. What I think is really interesting is further on down. So, will you come and remind me of my sin and kill my son? And Elijah said, "Give me your son." He didn't even take the time to bicker with her, to try to set her straight. He just goes, "Give me your son." He's like, I'm not gonna go down that road with you.
Yeah.
Just give me your son. He took her from her arms, carried it up a room where he was staying, and laid him on the bed. And he cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy upon this widow I am staying with by causing your son to die?" Then he stretched himself out of the boy 3 times and cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house, gave him to his mother, and said, "Look, your son is alive." This is what kind of doesn't blow me away, but it's like, really? Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth."
She saw a miracle.
Well, she was having food provided for 3 years. Isn't that a miracle enough?
But she missed it in her,
But she figured maybe that's just, natural, something on earth is making that happen versus this is divine. He was not,
Yeah.
he is.
Life.
Well, true, but I mean, flour was coming out of nowhere. Oil was coming out of nowhere.
but they saw miracles, and they had stories of that throughout history, but she may have just been thinking because this man of God was staying with her
Yeah.
at that time, he was providing for
Yeah.
him, and so she was keeping,
Okay, okay.
he stayed there.
I don't think
It
there's
became
an obvious
personal to
miracle
her
that
son.
takes place that for us on the outside looking in, we think about a jar of oil that never runs dry, the flour that never goes away. There's an obvious, physically visible miracle taking place.
Right.
So what is so pressing on the woman that she doesn't see the miraculous?
Yes.
Right, that was my
But then
question.
she
Yes.
says, "Have you come to remind me of my sin?" What is her sin that has pressed on her so hard that she maybe knows of the God
Okay.
of Elijah,
Unbelief.
that she maybe has heard of, maybe she's seen the miraculous, that she misses the miraculous that takes place in her own home
Yes.
until her son's brought back to life. You know what I mean?
Projecting a little
What is
bit.
her sin?
Yeah. I wanna say grief, but it might not be grief, but she's a widow, you know, so that's why I
Yes.
say I'm projecting. My own life, I've missed the miraculous
Grief
last
is a
28
natural,
months.
it's an emotion that takes place, it's a reaction to
Yes.
something, the death of her husband. maybe.
Yes, yes. And it alters your brain chemistry. I mean, here comes the science part, but it alters your brain chemistry, so it alters your perspective. So you literally actually physically see things different, interpret it differently in your mind, think about things differently
Yeah.
because you literally are not in your right mind
Right.
physically because of the chemicals. And so, yeah.
Okay.
And maybe, and I'm just kind of projecting too, maybe she had something to do with the death of her husband, sending him out to look for food and.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
We
Good
don't
point.
know
We don't know,
We
we
don't
don't know, but she took that upon herself, as most women will do, you know?
Well, we don't even know how long she's been a widow.
Exactly,
It
yeah.
doesn't say.
Well, it's enough time for her, I mean, we don't
Run
know,
out of food.
Yeah,
and the little boy, we don't know how old the little boy is.
right.
But, I mean, husband was obviously there to get the little boy unless that was a sin.
The only way we know.
Oh, hey!
Wait, what?
that-
But the only way we know he's not a man is he's called a child or a youth in the
Right.
scripture. He's not a man
What
yet.
was the sin, maybe
The
Unbelievable.
boy?
the boy?
Who knows?
Who knows? See, that's the thing, we don't know for sure, I mean, because she could have been a widow for a long time and then found some
Oh, I
Yeah.
comfort in the
I
arms
see
of a
what you're saying.
stranger.
Okay.
That could have been the sin, we don't
We
know.
just don't know, yeah.
Exactly. You
There's a
know,
lot of
there's a lot of holes to fill with our
Oh,
minds.
boy, our minds can just
And you know what, you guys, it's so funny, we go through classes like this and we have all these questions, and I have heard people over and over say, oh, when I get to heaven, I'm gonna find out the answer to this, and I just look at them and go, you're not gonna worry about the answer to this.
You ain't gonna
I
care.
know.
You're gonna be in awe, and you're gonna know everything, and who cares about these answers?
Yeah.
Let's compare her, the woman from Zarephath, to Mark chapter 12, verse 42. Actually, 41, real quick. Mark chapter 12, verse 41. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. They were paying their temple tax a lot of times, what they were doing. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a fraction of a penny. About a half a cent is what that comes to. Calling his disciples to him, he said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has put more into this treasury than all the others. They gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all that she had to live on. See the contrast?
Yeah.
Here's a woman who had a home. She was a widow. But she had, it was obvious to her, things were being provided. She woke up every day, the flour was there, the oil was there, she was able to do that. Yet she still did not believe until her son was raised from the dead. Compare that to this woman that gave all she had to live on, Jesus said. So where was her provision? Where was the widow's provision, and where was,
Yeah,
you follow?
yeah. What's interesting in this contrast,
They're both widows.
the beginning of the story of the widow from Zarephath, it says that we come back to God telling him, I've given her. God, she's been, so in some way we have to stop and say, God has spoken to her heart somehow, because he said, he told me that.
Yes, I commanded.
So, and then we have this woman that with the widow's mite, who is going into the temple, so we know God speaks to her. She's a woman of faith, who this one questions and this one gives wholeheartedly, willingly. There's no question about what she's giving,
Correct.
and yeah,
She's giving all she has to live on. She's not griping about it,
a genuine gift.
that we know of.
Well, but I think it is two different You are you're looking at a woman who goes to the temple, so she is a Jew. She's clearly following the faith.
Yes,
Okay, the other woman is a Canaanite. They follow Baal. And so, when her
Hence the
son
Lord
died,
your
it
God.
was believed that Baal could raise you from the dead, and her son did not raise. And so, she looked on it as, I did this for your God, and then your God took it and is allowing Baal to raise it. So, it's a total unbeliever and a believer, and the way they look on things differently. And who did God provide the miracle for? The unbeliever, so she could have faith. We never see a miracle that we're sure one happened.
Oh, yeah.
Who gave that for
yeah,
all.
right.
But we see it here, that miracle is for the unbeliever, so she could believe. So you still see the redemption process all the way.
Yes, yes, you do. But it's just that comparison of someone that, has an ongoing blessing going in their life, but they're not recognizing it.
Yeah.
Whereas the other individual, we don't know what's going on in the background. We don't know what goes on in her home, but every day, or not every day, but she's faithfully going to the temple. She's faithfully acting out her worship. She's faithfully giving, knowing that she pours in and she's going to get more in return.
Well, I like this, in 44 it says, for all they did cast in their abundance, but she of her want, basically her own free will, cast in all that she had, even all her living.
Yeah, the rich people, they came and they poured out of their abundance. In other words, they had a bunch. Okay, I'm going to take, since I have a bunch, I'm going to take out of what I have extra over here. So it's not really a sacrifice for them. And it was a temple tax. Like, I got to do this. Okay.
It's interesting to me that before this too, it talks about, the chief seats in the synagogues, and they like to say salutations and wear their long robes and, take widows' houses, devour widows' houses and things like that. So they're all for show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just, hey, look at me, and oh, I'm giving so much, or whatever. And they're making friends with all this, and they probably didn't even notice the widow.
Oh no,
But Jesus
no.
did.
No, she wasn't somebody that was on their radar at all.
Yeah.
They were sitting there going, who's the next rich guy coming in that I can make a connection with?
Yeah.
The lady, the widow, she went in unnoticed. She could have been naked and they wouldn't have noticed her.
But that's also something to us, like a little message to us, that no matter what we do, in private, wherever, when we make those little sacrifices, that God notices.
Absolutely, yes.
You know what's interesting about the comparison, when you do the comparison from New to Old Testament? In the Old Testament, these are the first people. They're the first groups of people. And they wrote throughout, the Old Testament was carried into the New Testament time. So the story and the life and miracles of the Old Testament were carried forward, and maybe this woman who gave from the widow, the woman who she made the cake for Isaiah, or for Elijah. She made the cake. So her faith was built through the miracles that she saw.
Yeah.
The woman with the widow's mite had faith and gave out of her faith before the miracle that she saw from giving the gift.
Yes.
So what built her faith to give the gift?
The stories that
The stories that she's already heard of the woman from Zarephath that fed Elijah. So in the comparison, we have to make sure we remember she's probably heard of this widow.
Well, that's
You
why
know what I mean?
testimonies are so important, because they
Yeah.
build others' faith.
However, now, just again, another pondering question like our wine pondering last night. When you're in a situation, people say, I have faith to get through. Are you putting faith in your faith? Are you putting faith in Jesus Christ? Are you putting your faith in your, I have lots of faith. Are you putting faith in your faith? Or are you putting faith in God or Jesus Christ? And again, that's the caveat, is a lot of people say, I have all, and they put all their faith in their faith. Exactly. So I'm gonna just throw, just to chew on, something to ponder, like next time you're face to face with your stuff, what's getting me through this? Is it my faith that's getting me through? Or is it Jesus Christ that's getting me through? Okay, let's break for lunch. Maria, are we ready?
Ready.
Cool. Let's break for lunch. Lord God, I'm gonna bless the lunch right now, Father, and say thank you for it.